Hello, and welcome back to this week's episode of The Mythical Hour, the podcast where I, Liesel, tell you, listener, all about Greek mythology. Just a quick little note, I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little bit different, my throat's been really weird recently. Okay, so this week's episode will be a little bit different from my others. If you remember from last week's episode where we talked about Theseus and the labyrinth, you'll recall that I said I would be doing a mini episode instead of a full one about Icarus and Daedalus. I decided to do this because adding their story in last week's episode would make the episode too convoluted and hard to follow. And this episode is considered a mini episode because the story is just not long enough to make it a full one. So, without further ado, welcome to this week's mini episode of The Mythical Hour, Daedalus and Icarus. Daedalus and Icarus' story, while itself pretty short, has a pretty long background to understand. My last episode about Theseus explains the labyrinth and the story behind it in more depth, but I will give a quick recap. Basically, on the island of Crete, there was a king named Minos, the son of Europa and Zeus. One day, a beautiful white bull appeared on Crete. Poseidon, the sea god, demanded that Minos sacrifice the bull to him. However, Minos refused, for he believed the bull to be too pretty to kill. As a punishment, Poseidon cursed Pasiphae, Minos' wife, to fall madly in love with the bull. Pasiphae fell so deeply in love with the bull, she just had to have it. So, she went to Daedalus, a famous inventor living on the island, and asked for his help. Daedalus crafted a hollow bull structure for Pasiphae to hide in. The structure allowed Pasiphae to get near the bull and do whatever she wanted with it. Pasiphae, being madly in love, slept with the bull and became pregnant with its child. When Pasiphae gave birth to the child, it had the head and tail of a bull, but the body of a man. The creature was then named the Minotaur. As the Minotaur got older, it developed an unnatural diet of people. So Minos had Daedalus create a labyrinth underneath the island to imprison the Minotaur in. Now, according to what myth you've heard, either Daedalus and his son, Icarus, are imprisoned in the labyrinth because they are the only people who know the route out of the labyrinth, and Minos is afraid they'll tell someone. Or Daedalus and Icarus tell Ariadne how to escape the labyrinth, who in turn tells Theseus, and Minos gets angry and imprisons the father and son. Also, FYI, if you want to hear more about Theseus, make sure to check out my last episode. Regardless of the myth you have heard, Daedalus and Icarus end up getting trapped in the labyrinth with no way out because of the Minotaur blocking their way. Also, Daedalus obviously couldn't just walk out of the labyrinth because of the guards guarding the island. Daedalus spent ages and ages mulling over how to escape the labyrinth until finally it came to him. Daedalus knew that once they escaped the labyrinth, they would not be able to leave the island by sea because of the guards, so he started to craft an idea. Daedalus spent days and days laboring at his workstation until finally he created 2 life-size wings made out of wax and bird feathers for him and Icarus. Before they left the labyrinth, Daedalus warned Icarus not to fly too high because if he did, the wax on his wings would melt from the sun exposure, and the wings would fall apart. Together, the pair escaped the labyrinth and took to the skies, flying high with their makeshift wings. But Icarus, being only a young boy at the time, was filled with a sense of freedom. He flew higher and higher, ignoring the shouts from his father below. Icarus was soaring, tasting the freedom he had been denied all the years trapped in the labyrinth. But, just as his father had warned, the heat from the sun slowly began to eat away at the wax on Icarus's wings, and Icarus began to fall from the sky. As Icarus fell, Daedalus could do nothing but watch as his own invention killed his son. After finally finding land, Daedalus then names the island Icaria after his beloved son. Icarus' story is meant to be one of warning, telling people to not let your ambition, curiosity, and naivety get the better of you, and is a very widely known myth. And that, everyone, brings our very, very short episode of The Mythical Hour to an end. Sorry it's so short, but it is a mini-myth, and usually I've been doing bi-weekly episodes, and this was released a week after my last one. So it's like you're not even missing out on anything. As always, I really, really hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. Also, I realized that I've been forgetting to ask people to rate my podcast because I completely forgot that was a thing you could do. But yeah, if you're like on Spotify or any other streaming podcast service, I don't really know. I think you can rate them, and I think you can rate it, and that would be super helpful and just amazing. But no pressure. Again, I really, really hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so, so very much for listening. Bye!